Joining us on the line now, it's Ben Harris-Quinney, who is the chairman of the Bow Group, the Conservative think tank. Ben, how are you?
Yeah, I'm not too bad. A bit tired, but it was a very interesting conference this time, not because of what was going on at the main part of the conference, but what was going on the fringes.
Now, I get the sense at the Bow Group that you perhaps weren't too happy with Theresa May's proposal for Brexit, Chequers, of course, as it is called. Would I be correct in saying that?
You would. I think the vast majority of Brexiteers are unhappy with the Chequers settlement because what people voted for in the referendum was a return to all sovereign powers to Parliament, and Chequers doesn't give us that because it still allows the EU to decide what regulations are affecting British businesses, and also has a legal jurisdiction over what's going on in Britain. So I think people feel that we are leaving the European Union and all EU institutions, and we are returning all powers to the British Parliament. So that's what we want to see.
And of course, Boris Johnson made his speech at Conservative Party conference, and there were queues of people to get in, and it got a lot of media attention. Did you see that out of interest as a leadership bid?
Well, there's a curious trait in Britain, certainly in the Conservative Party, that people are generally not forthcoming about their ambitions. It's very unlike America, where people are sort of continually running for president. The impression I get is that it's very clear that Boris wants to be Prime Minister. I think that's been an open secret for those that have known Boris since his time at university. But I don't get the impression he is pulling the trigger yet. I think he wants to be in the role before the next election, but I think he's going to let Theresa May complete the Article 50 period until March 29th before he makes his move.
And what are your thoughts on Theresa May? Do you think she'll stay on as leader? Do you think there's any danger of her going?
I think that there is a pressing danger against Theresa May. And Theresa May's tactics since she took over the leadership of the Conservative Party and as Prime Minister has really been to kick the can down the road, to try and keep everyone happy by not detailing what her full plans are. Of course, as time runs short, as we get close to the March 29th Brexit deadline, she is going to have to pick a side, I guess, and that is going to lead to ructions in the Conservative Party and in Parliament as well. So I think that sort of Damocles is hanging over Theresa May. I would probably bet that she will last at least until March the 29th, but I would also bet against her being the leader of the Conservative Party by the next general election.
Now, Ben, of course, it's not the case that she has an impossible job, because people like you from the Bow Group and people who are, dubbed Brexiteers and they want to see a hard Brexit, and they will criticise her to no end, especially with things like Chequers. But surely the truth is, Ben, that it was 52% to leave and 48% to remain. And so Chequers is kind of representative of the whole country.
Well, I mean, that's not how referendums work. You don't, if one side wins a referendum, you don't say, oh, well, that we've got to find an average between both sides. The question was clear and deliberately stark. It was a yes-no. It wasn't a sliding scale of how much you want to leave the European Union. And the majority for leave was over 1 million people, which is usually far greater than a majority than any political party gets in gaining an election. And obviously, when a political party wins a general election, they don't say, oh, well, 40% of people voted for Labour, so 40% of the cabinet are going to be Labour ministers. That's just not the way that democracy works. I think there was clarity in the decision to leave, but I do accept your point that Theresa May has an extraordinarily difficult task, probably the most difficult task for any Prime Minister since the Second World War. And so the Bow Group has not called for Theresa May to go. We acknowledge the difficulty of Theresa May's task. I think David Cameron was right in his instincts that a Brexit result needed a Brexit government. We have 70% Remain cabinet. Obviously, Theresa May supported Remain. We have a 70% Remain parliament. So we people often criticise Brexiteers for saying the things during the referendum of what we wanted Brexit to look like. But the fact is we just haven't had a Brexiteer government. But nonetheless, I do have sympathies for the difficulty of Theresa May's position, and we just want her to deliver the Brexit that people voted for, rather than at this time campaigning for her to leave office.
Now, I hate to bring this up because I appreciate that you're probably sick of hearing from people who believe this way, but the People's Vote Brigade, they kicked up a fairly big fuss at the Conservative Party conference because they allegedly weren't allowed in with the main events. There were some fringe events where, to their credit, it did look extremely full, and they said that they were perhaps not covered by the press in a fair way. Now, I know, well, I think I can garner your opinions on whether there should be a people's vote, but do you think there is any chance we will actually have one?
Well, on the first point, as to essentially freedom of speech, I don't agree with banning people from speaking at the Conservative Party conference. We, the Bow Group and the Brexit Advance Coalition, had our own alternative conference outside of the Conservative Party conference, which actually was better attended than the main conference, but we weren't allowed to take part in the main conference either. So the Conservative Party has taken the position of sort of neither side of the debate can criticise the Chequers deal, and I think that's wrong. There are people in the Conservative Party, of course, that believe we should remain in the European Union, and I disagree with them, but I don't disagree with their right to put that view across. The problem with the People's Vote is we've already had a people's vote. It was the largest exercise in democracy that this country has ever engaged in. And my question to those people campaigning for another vote is, so how often do they think we should have this vote? Is it every 6 months? Is it every year? Is it every 2 years? You know, there has to be the acknowledgement that when there is a major exercise in democracy like the EU referendum, that counts for the opinion of the British people going forward, at the very least until a political party is elected under the mandate of holding another vote in their manifesto, and a sort of a further fully democratic decision is in place to that can counter the previous. But yeah, the Remain campaign never stopped campaigning for Remain. So they were campaigning for a second vote as soon as the results of the first vote were in, or indeed in some cases, like with Michael Heseltine, campaigning that the first vote simply be ignored. So I would call for reality to take place in the minds of those campaigning in that way, that we've had a great exercise in democracy, and that should suffice.
So do you not think there's any chance that we'll have one, whether or not you agree with the premise of it?
Well, no. I mean, there is of course a chance. I don't think it will be before we've left the European Union, as these people are campaigning for. But in the future, there is certainly a chance of these things happening. And my feeling is that both the EU and the Remain supporters in the United Kingdom will never stop campaigning for us to go back into the European Union. And so this will be a consistent battle. So I acknowledge the possibility of that, and it's something we will continue to campaign on.
And of course, going away from Brexit, because as we know, it's talked about heavily, there are some other issues, or issues that the Bow Group have highlighted on their social media to do with the Conservative Party. I want to talk to you about membership. Now, a few high-profile politicians, actually both formerly with UKIP, Stephen Wolfe and Aaron Banks, I think they both applied. I know Stephen Wolfe definitely did to be a member of the Conservative Party.
They did both apply, yeah.
So they did both apply. Aaron Banks as well, of course, was a donor to the Tory Party, then became a donor to UKIP, and now wanted to return to the Tory Party. What are your thoughts on their memberships being revoked? Firstly, did you expect it? And secondly, why do you think that's happened?
Well, the Conservative Party 30 years ago had 1 million members. When David Cameron took over, it had almost 400,000 members. In recent years, that membership has dropped to under 100,000, and we've seen Labour reinvigorate themselves with democracy and membership engagement, and they're somewhere around 800,000 members. So membership matters. The Conservative Party has gradually reduced the role of members and the sort of the democratic role that members have in the party to essentially nothing. And that has seen the membership drop, and some of the unconservative policies that the Conservative Party has pushed in recent years has seen the membership drop. In terms of Aaron Banks and Stephen Wolfe, what Theresa May said was that they can't join the Conservative Party because they previously supported another political party. Well, the problem with that is that goes for a hell of a lot of people who are members of the Conservative Party. It goes for a hell of a lot of Conservative MPs, quite frankly. I mean, David Campbell-Bannerman, MEP, who also supports the democratisation of the Conservative Party and spoke at our conference, used to be chairman of UKIP. And he's been allowed back into the Conservative Party.
Of course, Liz Truss back in the day was a Social Democrat.
Liz Truss, Anna Soubry was SDP. Helen Grant was Labour. Ros Altman was actually a Conservative minister, and it was discovered she was still a member of the Labour Party. So what Theresa May is saying makes no sense, and what we're campaigning for is essentially democratisation and transparency. We want to see the members really have the lead role in the Conservative Party in deciding the direction of it in the way that they have in the Labour Party. And we also want to see clear and published and evenly applied guidelines as to what the criteria is for membership of the Conservative Party, because clearly at the moment it's one rule for some people and another rule for others. And these decisions are being made by unelected apparatchiks at Conservative Central Office. And I think in Britain that prides itself in democracy, we have a real democratic deficit there, because with the first past the post system, most seats are safe seats. And so it's the unelected bureaucrats in Conservative Central Office who are deciding who the members are, who are deciding who can stand for Parliament. And I think that's just a very antiquated system in the modern information age, where people want more control and more democratisation.
I can't understand what you were saying about Theresa May saying that they wouldn't be allowed to join because of their support for other parties, because wasn't there, I think it may have been under David Cameron, but there was a UKIP MEP who made a high-profile defection back to the Conservative Party.
Well, there have been many. As I say, David Campbell-Bannerman made a defection back to the Conservative Party. He was formerly chairman of UKIP. Amjad Bashir was
that was who I was
UKIP
thinking of,
MEP that moved across to the Conservative Party. And I mean, there have been countless examples of this over the long history of the Conservative Party. I mean, Winston Churchill famously went over to the Liberals and came back to the Conservative Party. So, but this is what Theresa May has said. She had an interview with Michael Crick when she was in South Africa, and she said that's the reason for not allowing Aaron Banks and Stephen Wolfe in. So it doesn't make any sense. And I think she's made a mockery of the system in making such a weak argument. And I think the Conservative Party, if it is to survive, it must be open to people who have previously been of a different view coming around to the view of the Conservative Party. And that's essentially the point of it. The point of it is to win people over and to make the best arguments and to have people that previously supported other political parties vote for it and support it. So, yes, it's absolutely ludicrous, the current policy.
And last thing, if I may, Ben, you spoke about unconservative policies that Theresa May's government has been pursuing. Firstly, what are they? And secondly, what direction? I appreciate you probably don't think it's the right direction, but do you think there is a clear vision, a clear direction for this country under Theresa May post-Brexit?
No, I don't. I don't think that Theresa May has elucidated what her vision is at all. I think the general way of doing things is to sit on the fence. That has changed. I think people want plain-speaking politicians. I think people want clear ideas. And that is not something that is evident in Theresa May or in the Conservative Party. And, you know, David Cameron's whole pitch, really, in moving the Conservative Party towards from the right to the left, was that all Conservatives won't be around in 10 or 20 years because conservatism is a dying ideology. And what we've actually seen in recent years with things like Brexit is a huge re-energization of conservatism as an ideology. And figures like Jacob Rees-Mogg, which Cameron used to dismiss as the minister for the 18th century, have suddenly become immensely popular. And the Mogmentum movement is actually chiefly run by students. And
do you think he could be leader?
I mean, I don't think he will be. I think he could be, but what I'm saying is you can't ignore his popularity, and I think his popularity is down to the fact that he is very strident and unapologetic in his views, much in the same way that Jeremy Corbyn is, for example. So I think ideology has come back into politics, and so the window dressing measures like international aid and same-sex marriage that the Conservative Party tried to do and thought they would gain support in doing from the centre have clearly failed. And I think people are coming back to the idea that if you are going to be a Conservative Party, you have to be conservative. If you're going to be a Labour Party, you have to be socialist. And that's the direction that politics is heading, not just in the UK, but in the West in general.
Brilliant. Well, Ben Harris-Quinney, chairman of the Bow Group, thank you very much for speaking to us.
My pleasure.